Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. So today I have a special guest, Angela Henderson. Angela Henderson is a business coach for women who want to kick ass and maintain a life. She's a small business coach, author, entrepreneur, blogger, mental health clinician, and a mother. She helps small business owners around Australia and the world navigate the challenges of building a successful business while maintaining a life. She has a holistic approach, which is what attracted me to work with her. And she emphasizes the importance of holistic wealth, having a richness in your life as well as a successful business. Ange, welcome to the show.
Hey, my friend. Super excited to be here today. And it's just awesome to hang out in your presence. So yeah, so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. So I guess the first question I always ask my guests is just to tell us in your words about your journey and what attracted you to working with women in their businesses, because it's quite a big leap from being a mental health clinician, because you did that for like 15 years plus. So moving from that role into a business coach, there has to be a journey in there. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So yes, so obviously I have an undergrad in psych and social, a master's in social work. I then did my clinical prac over in America, which allowed me to diagnose people with schizophrenia, bipolar depression, anxiety, etc. And I love mental health. I have a huge passion about breaking down around the stigma around mental health, especially women in business and women collectively, because I think we just don't go and get the help, or we minimize, our health, not just for mental health, but perimenopause, menopause, you name it. And I think we need to advocate more for our health. But when my son was 9 months old, I just saw him playing on the floor with all these toys that have been given to us, which we were very grateful for, but they were all battery operated. And I thought, surely there's other toys out there that will stimulate fine motor skill, gross motor skill, imaginary play, but allow parents to also connect with the child. So that's when I started my first business, which was named after my son, Finley, and me, where we focused on creating childhood memories through play, love, and travel. We started with 0 products, ended up with 1,400 different products when we finished.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just really great because we sourced product around Australia, around the world. We tried to do independent artists where we could, so other moms who were working at home but didn't want to grow a big business. So it was really awesome. So that's where that business came. And then from there, after 14 coffee dates, and I don't even drink coffee, I finally realized that, those coffee dates where people were just picking my brain for my level of expertise. And I realized, if I would have charged those people money for each of those sessions, I could have a secondary business. And that's how I got into business consulting, speaking and podcasting. So that's where it is. And now I help amazing humans like you around the world, to make more money, but do it in a way that you're not just making money, but you're actually waking up and loving your life collectively, because it's not just about the money.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. And one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast is, having worked with you as my coach, you've often brought up, because you are a woman in your 40s, and you've often brought up about the impact of perimenopause on yourself and how it's impacted you in your business. And I thought it would be a really cool conversation to have with you about that. And I guess even just starting from the beginning of just how that impacted you initially, how perimenopause impacted you, and like what it took for you to notice that it was impacting you, because I think that's often a big problem.
100%. So I knew earlier on, because I had to do IVF with my second child, we almost had to do it with my first child, that when the doctors ran a new test in Australia, they didn't have it when I was going through that pregnancy, but it's like the AMH test, I think it's called.
Yes.
And they test your egg reserve really and your egg quality. And so when that test came available, the doctor immediately called me back and said, listen, you need to come in. They said, and the analogy that they used, which I thought was but it makes sense, is that every month I was still firing and releasing an egg, not a problem, but it was like an apple falling from the tree, but the apple was rotten. So my body was still doing what technically it needed to do, but none of the eggs were technically ever going to allow me to get pregnant. So that's when they said, listen, if your body's already like this, we would hypothesize, because as you know, there's not a lot of research around it,
Yeah.
but we would hypothesize that more than likely you'll go into perimenopause earlier than the average person because you're already displaying problems, do you know what I mean, from an internal perspective. And so I was probably would have been, I don't know, I reckon 37, 38 when I started to get like super tired. And I started to think like, oh, it's just like, again, what we hear, it's just, you've got 2 kids, you're running a business, you know, you're a woman, you know, like you've got decision fatigue. And so I minimized it at the beginning because I was just like, oh no, it's just the typical day to day, get over it. But then I couldn't shake it. And I was like, no, this is more than just like, you know, whatever. So then I went to doctors, and the doctors were like, again, like, you don't have a cold, you don't have this, nothing's wrong. But I was like, no, something's not, do you know what I mean, adding up. And then I was like, oh, I remember what the doctor said around perimenopause and menopause. So for me, what I've really experienced most is just the fatigue and also the fogginess of decisions. And also a little bit of like, not memory loss, but like short-term memory where you're like, because of the fogginess, you're like also forgetting things. But again, it's also hard because I have ADHD. So it's hard to distinguish how much of it is my ADHD versus how much of it is perimenopause. But what I've noticed is for the last 10 years, had a baseline of my ADHD, but it was getting worse. And I was like, so then I look at things like, is there anything else contributing that could be adding stress to make this worse? And there wasn't. Everything was still day-to-day normal life. So that's when I was like, okay, these are also some of the signs and symptoms of perimenopause that again can mimic other things, you know, in our life, like me, ADHD. So this is where, again, I guess I'm passionate about being able to start speaking more about perimenopause and menopause, though I'm not the expert, but being able to share my story, because I think we forget that sometimes we, as women, just go, yep, carry on. Or, yep, it's just the ADHD, when in fact it's not. And it is the perimenopause is starting to kick in.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing, Ange. I get so many women in my clinic that are coming in with fatigue as really the main symptom. And they've been to the doctors, they've had blood tests, they're getting told everything's normal, you're normal, see you later kind of thing. But this fatigue, and I've experienced that myself, it's quite overwhelming. And when you're getting told, well, nothing's wrong with you, it's really hard to kind of go, what is going on with me, when medically, apparently, I'm normal. And I don't think we get enough education as women about perimenopause and what that looks like, because you just think, I've got to admit, even, you know, as a qualified nutritionist and naturopath, we had very little education. The education I have is what I've had to seek and get more study in, because as you mentioned, there's really not a lot of research on it. It was always just considered to be just a normal part of a woman's life cycle, just get on with it. And most women don't even know that perimenopause can start up to 10 years prior to menopause. So when you're experiencing the symptoms that you are, it can be really, really challenging, because it feels like you're just wading through every day with this big weight on you. And it's very hard to think when you're running your own business and responsible for your own income. It is kind of,
well, the tiredness in itself, do you know what I mean, was like, I literally, I mean, because I'm it's quite easy for me to fall asleep and stay asleep, right? So it's not like, that was the other thing. I was like, it's not like I'm tossing and churning and then desk scrolling on Facebook. I was like, no, man, I'm in bed around 9:30, 10, and I could like, I'd have to set the alarm to be able to wake up, because I would just like sleep. And then the first thing I would think of when I wake up is, how many hours till I can take a nap, or how many hours till I'm back in bed? And I was like, that's not normal for a 37, 38-year-old to be like that. And that's where you start going, do I have cancer? Am I dying? Because why is that the first thing that you're thinking about? But the tired is like, it's next level. And I don't think, like, my next level will be different to the person who's listening to this and to yours, but like literally you're just like a walking zombie is what it feels like. You're physically there, but mentally and emotionally, I was like checked out. Like, I had to work, as you know, very hard. And I think my clients would have a hard time saying that I wasn't present, because I would work exceptionally hard on those days with client work to make sure it didn't impact my clients. But after that, I would be napping from 12 to 1 on my lunch break. And then before I'd go and pick my kids up, I'd have another nap, and that would have to get me through kind of that witching hour with the kids. I also know, and I won't go too much into it, but like my human design, there's a thing around human design where you take your date of birth and time of conception, I think it was. But anyways, and so my human design, I'm a projector, and projectors in the way our energy is, I'm also mindful that like if I'm around a lot of people, my energy could get drained. But this was different. This was like literally, it wasn't like you go to a meeting and you're like, oh my God, it's too loud or too noisy and I just need a break and just to sit and desk scroll. No, it was like, no, man, I need to lay my head down and I would be out, you know?
Yeah.
So it's the tiredness is just crazy. And that's where I think people, organizations and businesses aren't prepared. We've only now just gotten to the point where organizations and businesses are acknowledging like freaking pregnancy and being able to, I mean, the symptoms that people get pregnancy, or people who suffer from endometriosis, for example, and have to take time off. I worry about Australia and the world collectively that we're not prepared to be able to help. We have an aging community, and that we're not prepared as companies or organizations to help those women who are like, I need an extra day off, even though I have no sick leave, because it's like, this is happening to me.
Yeah. And it's so true, Ange. And I think it's a part of that is just the way women have been in the workforce in previous decades. There's been very few women that have been in kind of working full time in their 40s, 50s, specifically back in the 80s. There would have been a few, but not many at all. Maybe more in the 90s and noughties. But it's really now, I feel like that we've got a fairly big proportion of women who have been working and building really solid careers for a long time. And they're the ones right now that are starting to speak up, I think, because I don't know whether it's just me because I work in the space, but to me, that feels like there's a lot more talk about perimenopause by people that have got big profiles, and that is starting to make a difference and starting to cut through. But I feel like there's still a bit of a stigma around it and about talking about it. And also
100%.
There's still that thing with women needing to be in that more kind of masculine energy in the workforce and not necessarily conceding to the fact that they've got this going on. You know, can you imagine sitting in a room of men and saying, well, you know, I'm in perimenopause and I need to have a rest. Like it just wouldn't happen. So these are the conversations which I'm loving to see right now about this and how it's impacting women. So you've talked about having naps. Were there any other things that you were able to do to support yourself and maybe continuing to do to support yourself during this time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I still have to, like, for example, my new partner is, I have to really much be like, hey, I just need a nap. Can you help me with the kids? Or can you so I think it's important to understand that you have to use your voice and ask, because nobody's coming to save you. Not those men in the workroom, not your friends, not your peers, not your partners, because nobody can read your mind. So I think the first thing is finding your voice and not being afraid to ask for help. Not just ask for help with perimenopause, but just ask for help in general. I need help with the dishes tonight. I need to do this, and allowing yourself to put yourself first, because I don't think women do that collectively. The second thing for me specifically is I would be encouraging any small business owner out there or whatever, is you need a team. Now, I'm not saying that you need a huge team, but I have had a small team of people, and if it wasn't for my team, things would be a hot mess, because it just would be. I don't have the capacity to respond to all the emails. I don't have all the capacity to onboard clients. I don't have all that. And so those days where I've just been like, hey, I'm out, you're going to have to do it. My team's been able to support me by emailing, following up, and the business just carries on. So I do encourage, those are my two things. And the last thing that I would say too is I'm very mindful about taking breaks and holidays. Now, I know as a small business owner, that might seem daunting, but even if you can just take 2 to 3 days to go somewhere and rest, eat good food, and just let your body kind of rejuvenate, I think it's really crucial, because if not, it's like a compound effect that happens as you keep pushing it away and pushing it away and pushing it away, and you actually get sicker and sicker, not just from the perimenopause, but from stress, anxiety, etc. So my 3 things would be like, ask for help, make sure that you've got a team, you know, and again, making sure that you've got plenty of time to rest. Now, I know people out there will be like, well, that's great if you've got money. But listen, my thing is we don't make our health a priority in Western society, in my opinion. And so you can it's either going to cost you now, or it's going to cost you later on when you're 6 feet under. So figure out a way to make your health a priority. Stop using like the excuse, because I also know a lot of Australians, I'm only speaking as I'm in Australia, but around the world collectively, they can always find money for alcohol and that bottle of wine each night.
Yeah.
Well, if you can find, let's just say an average bottle of wine is $20. If you can find $20 a day, that's $600 a month in wine. So it's like, don't tell me that you can't, you know what I mean? How do I explain this? Make a priority, make yourself a priority, but we minimize this as a priority. And then you get really, really sick and now you're out of work. You've got no savings. Whereas all again is, I believe, people preventative. Now we can't prevent menopause and perimenopause from coming. It's gonna freaking happen. But what I'm saying is you can reduce other health problems that might fester or appear with this if you start to take care of yourself now.
Absolutely. And you coach many women in business, and many of them are in that age group. Do you feel like in your experience with women that they're talking about this, or do you feel like that's not really
that's a hard no?
Yeah,
I agree with you that there are high profile people starting to talk about that. But again, they're high profile people. Now, some people would argue, well, Angie, you've got a voice too. I'm talking about high profile movie stars. Do you know what I mean? Like we're talking like people with millions of followers. Okay. I don't have that. But what I'm saying is that's why I believe as a business consultant, my framework is to help people in order to be in alignment and make more money. I believe you do need a strategy, but you need to look at wealth, health, and relationships. Those four things all go hand in hand. And so for me, I just think that like we need to be talking more and more about this, because I'm in the last since February, I've been on like 22 different podcasts. I've been on 9 stages speaking, etc. And when I look at the other attendees or the other speakers, I should say, not one of those summits or one of those conferences have had anything to do with educating the women audience, because it's all women audience about perimenopause and menopause.
Interesting.
I believe we have a duty of care, do you know what I mean, to be able to start having those conversations. Now, not everyone might come to that presenter's conversation because it's not applicable to them, but I also encourage all women to start getting educated now versus when you're in the thick of it. That to me is that preventative stuff, right? If you think about kids, for example, my son's just about 14. He's just got himself a girlfriend. So my partner and I were just talking the other day about, we'll get prepared. He's going to start having sex soon. And I was like, what do you mean? He's only like 13. He's not even 14. His birthday's at the end. And he's like, it's going to happen. He's like, I was having sex at 14 and 15. And I was like, what? Because I wasn't. I was like, oh my God, I was appalled. But here's the thing. It's like, I'll be having that conversation about, protection and birth control and all of that. So like, I'm already educating him, do you know what I mean, about that before, fingers crossed, that shit ever happens, right? And so we're able to educate our kids about, do you know what I mean, safe sex and all that. But we also are able to talk to them about puberty and menstrual cycles and boners and everything else, but we're not able to start having like earlier conversations about perimenopause. And I think it's actually quite neglectful that we're not having those conversations.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Ange, because it is not something really that women talk about, even mothers and daughters. Like I've never had that conversation with my mother. I'm sure there are people that do, but I just feel like, it is missing. And I think part of it is, I think Australians are fairly stoic and we just kind of get on with it to a point. But I also think that there's just never been really an emphasis on it. And, you've had the experience where you've been told, in your late 30s that you're going to get perimenopause early. And there are many women at 35 that are starting that process and they have absolutely no idea. So I think having these conversations is really important. And you talked before about some of the things that you encourage women to do that work with you. But if you're in a position where you just don't have those resources, I guess, to have help, what kind, and I love what you mentioned before, because I do love your whole framework around that holistic life and wealth. What kind of things do you think people can do, or women can do, within that framework to help support themselves when they just they're starting out, or they just don't have those extra resources and don't have a team. How can they help themselves?
Well, listen, I'm going to call a little BS on that, because my thing is like, we both work with the same outsourcing crew, for example, right? And we pay $15 an hour, do you know what I mean? For our VAs. I'm not saying that you've got to go spend $50 or $100 an hour on whatever, but we work with an outsourcing crew that's based in Australia that has a team over in the Philippines. And to me, it's like, even if it's 2 hours a week, as a business owner, you can find $30 to get 2 hours of your time back in rest. That's a cost. Like, if you're drinking, buying shoes, buying makeup, buying cigarettes, buying drugs, you can find $30 to get someone to help you for 2 hours a week. That's so 8 hours a month. So it's about a party. The other things that I would say there is like, make sure that you're, again, leaning on family and friends. That doesn't cost anything, but what it will, in your brain, it will think is, it's costing my ego and pride, because in a Western culture, we don't ask for help. We carry on, as you say. So I encourage you to put your ego and pride aside and really start asking for help. That doesn't cost anything. And lastly, I would say, again, exercise and sunshine doesn't cost you anything either. Even putting yourself in sunshine and getting vitamin D for 10 to 15 minutes a day can help alleviate mood. It's not going to take away all the symptoms, but do you know what I mean? What it does for your body is significant. So what I'm saying is, it's like, choose, but I believe you can afford a VA overseas to help you. You can afford to ask for help, and you can afford to make it a priority if you choose to. To be able to go outside, connect with nature, ground, and feel good about yourself. Other things that I do is I practice daily gratitude. So when I wake up in the morning and I do journaling, I don't do journaling every day. So I also don't want to get in the habit of women, if you don't do it this way, it's the wrong way. No, find what works for you. But when I journal, I'll put what would make today great. And then I'll put, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? Because when you do infuse gratitude in your world, you look through things from a different lens. You look from things from a place of abundance versus scarcity. I'm not minimizing that life sucks with perimenopause some days, but I still am like, there's always still something good to look for. And when you turn it around and frame it that way, I personally feel that, like, more of us in this phase would see things from a different light, versus, like, I see some women, this is just my perception, poor me, I'm in perimenopause, my life is doomed for the next 15 years. And I'm like, well, if you're going to fucking think like that for the next 15 years, it's probably going to also impact your mental health. You're probably going to eat poorly, which means you're going to put on weight, which means then you're going to feel bad. But then we blame the perimenopause, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And what I'm saying is, yes, it's here. It's not going anywhere. But it's like, how do you learn to accept it? How do you learn to embrace it and still live a life with abundance and gratitude? Because if you continue to blame, it doesn't matter, do you know what I mean? Because it is going to feel like your life is doom and gloom. So that's kind of my thoughts around that, Suze.
Yeah, no, I love that. And with that comes an element of self-care. So, and you're right, just going outside, grounding, looking at the sky, if, you know, just these things are free. Have a bath if you have a bathtub. If you don't have a bathtub, get a bucket, fill it with some warm water and some Epsom salts, which are dirt cheap at the supermarket, and sit there and breathe. You know, there are a number of things you can do. I know one of my favorite ones is to put on a really dorky song like Vanilla Ice or something like that and have a dance around my office just to get my energy up if I'm feeling that fatigue. So there's some really easy things that don't have to cost a lot of money. And as you say, prioritizing getting help, because there are some very cost-effective ways to get support when you are a business owner that will really help you to free up your time. And whether you spend that time resting or doing something else that's going to take it off your plate in your business, I think that's really important. So if you could summarize, I guess, the key takeaways that you think women listening could start implementing, I guess, pretty much straight away, what would those key takeaways be?
Yeah, my key takeaway would be like, first of all, just make your health a priority. right? Stop going, oh, like stop binging on your podcast, Susie, and book an appointment with Susie. Like, like how many listeners out there right now love your podcast every week, but are too nervous to book a call with you? Book a call with Susie. Because again, we get in our heads. So, do you know what I mean? Like in our heads all the time. But well, what is it going to be like to talk to Susie? Is she going to do this? I'm going to have to do this. Oh, and then you talk yourself out of it. Again, be proactive with your health. And my first thing would be is work with someone like Susie, or find someone like Susie that is going to help you start to understand your body better, but also be someone that can back you. Do you know what I mean? Like your husband's probably not going to understand. Your grandparents probably aren't going to understand. Get around a community of people. So one is make your health a priority and book in to speak with Susie, because again, nobody's coming to save you. Two, again, I would say, like, again, just kind of recapping what we've already said, is surround yourself with good humans, right? Three, ask for help, whether or not that's paid help, or do you mean, hey, can you take the kids for the weekends, mom and pop, so I can go do X, Y, and Z. And like I said, every day you get a choice on how you live your life, perimenopause, menopause, or not. But whatever you are not choosing, whatever you're not changing, you are choosing. And so by you sitting there, you're either choosing to make your health a priority, or you're choosing not to make your health a priority. And my last thing to say is, whatever your choice is, don't bitch about it. Because whatever you're not changing, you are choosing. Nobody is coming to save you. And so again, and I get it, perimenopause, and that is horrific. I've also gone through severe anxiety and depression. It's horrific not being able to get out of bed. I get it. But nobody but myself made changes. So that's what I would say, Suze.
Love it, Ange. That is awesome. Now I just wanted to, I didn't intend to do this, but I'm just going to segue into Bali retreat, because I think that is a really important thing when it comes to self-care and surrounding yourself with other women. And, I've spoken about it before. I'm going on retreat with you in Bali in October, and I can't wait. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Ange?
Yes, you can't wait. I can't wait. I officially booked my tickets just yesterday. So I'm thrilled. Listen, again, I don't think women collectively make time for themselves. So this retreat is not just about, it's probably going to be 40% learning. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean by learning, there's a day with speakers and a day of masterminding and a day of planning and things like that. But the middle bit, the other 60 to 70%, is really going to be around me showing women other tools and strategies that they can utilize in order for not menopause, perimenopause, but just day to day. So we've got sound healing. We've got cultural experiences that we're going to be doing. We're doing water purification ceremonies. We're doing meditation and all that goodness, but also eating really good, delicious food. Also being around high vibrational people. Also being in a nice place, do you know what I mean? As in like nice surroundings, right? And all of those factors, I believe, will contribute to people walking away from that retreat feeling lighter and ready to kind of kick ass in business and life. Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. I can't wait, Ange. It's been so great to have you on the podcast today. Yes. Where can people find you if they want to follow you or look at potentially working with you?
Yeah, just head to my website, angelahenderson.com.au. And from there, you can check out the Bali retreat. You can look at, different ways to work with me. You might want to binge my podcast. You do whatever feels in alignment for you. But yes, head to angelahenderson.com.au.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. Thanks so much, Ange. It's been awesome, as always, speaking with you, and an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
So fun, my friend. You have a beautiful day.
Great. Thank you. You too. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts, or the follow button if you're on Spotify, so that you can get each new episode delivered to you every single week. If you like free stuff, and who doesn't, then head over to susiegarden.com and grab my 8 essential age-defying secrets every woman over 40 should know right now. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion, head over to Instagram and DM me at Susie Garden Wellness. I'd love to connect with you.